The US alone has 150,000 deaths following surgery each year. This is more than triple the number of road traffic fatalities. Research has consistently shown that at least half of these deaths and major complications are avoidable. Atul Gawande is a surgeon who's passionate about improving on these statistics. In his book, The Checklist Manifesto, he makes the case that as simple as checklists might sound, they can be a strategy for overcoming failure. They build on the experience and knowledge of people, but somehow also make up for our inevitable human inadequacies. To understand how failure can lead to fatality, consider the following. When was the last time that you went on a business trip and it was only at the hotel or the airport that you remembered that you forgot your toothbrush at home? It wasn't because you didn't understand the importance of dental hygiene, but it was because you were distracted and you forgot to pack your toothbrush. Similarly, in medicine, in surgery, simple mistakes can lead to fatalities. Mistakes such as forgetting to administer the right antibiotics at the right time before surgery, or forgetting to wash hands before placing a catheter. So why do people fail? Well, there are two reasons. One is ignorance, meaning that we only have a partial understanding of the world. And second is inaptitude, meaning that the knowledge exists, but we fail to apply it correctly. In both cases, checklists can be a successful tool. Medicine today is extremely complex. Think of an intensive care unit. On average, 178 actions are performed on an individual daily. So how do you ensure that all of these are done correctly despite all the distractions? We seem to be obsessed with having great components, the best devices, the best drugs, the best specialists, but pay little attention to how to make them fit together well. Atul looked to two other industries, the aviation industry and the construction industry, for references, because these two industries have managed to achieve an outstanding track record of safety. Checklists were invented after the Boeing Model 299 test flight crashed because it was too complex for one person to fly. The solution that finally addressed the challenge with Model 299 did not require pilots to undergo longer training. They created a pilot's checklist. But it is far from obvious that something as simple as a checklist could be of substantial help in a complex situation. Professionals are tempted to believe that their jobs are too complex to reduce to a checklist. However, in a complex environment, experts need to deal with two main difficulties: the fallibility of human memory and attention, especially when it comes to mundane, routine matters that are easily overlooked, and people's ability to lull themselves into skipping steps even when they remember them. In one experiment to reduce central line infections in Johns Hopkins Hospital, Peter Pronovo decided to give checklist a try. He created a checklist with 5 simple steps to take in order to avoid infections when putting in the central line, and authorized nurses to stop doctors if they saw them skipping a step on the checklist. A year afterward, they found that the line infections rate went from 11% to 0. In that one hospital, the checklist prevented 43 infections and 8 deaths and saved $2 million. By providing a cognitive net to catch mental flaws of memory and attention and thoroughness, checklists seem to be able to defend anyone, even the experienced, against failure in many more tasks than we realize. Have you ever wondered how hundreds of people are able to build a skyscraper that stands up straight even in an earthquake? How can the workers be sure that they were constructing it properly? How can they be sure that they have the right knowledge and that they were applying this knowledge correctly? In the past, master builders designed, engineered, and oversaw the construction. But by the middle of the 20th century, the master builders were dead and gone because the variety and sophistication of advancements in every stage of the construction process had overwhelmed the abilities of any individual to master them. Construction companies use two main tools to manage complexity. The construction schedule is a line-by-line, day-by-day listing of every building task that needs to be accomplished, in what order and when. It is drawn up by a group of people that represent each of the many trades, and it is like a succession of day-by-day checks. The submittal schedule is also a checklist that specifies communication tasks. Project managers deal with the unexpected by making sure that experts speak to one another and take one another's concerns into account when discussing unplanned developments and agreeing on the way forward in a situation. To resolve complex problems, you have to make sure that the critical people talk. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, everyone was waiting for the government to step in, but a centrally controlled solution was not going to work. Lee Scott, the CEO of Wal-Mart, realized that to handle this complex situation, he was not going to be able to effectively issue instructions. Instead, he worked on making sure that people talked. Under conditions of true complexity, efforts to dictate every step from the center will fail. People need room to act and adapt, yet they cannot succeed as individuals. What is required is a mix of freedom and the expectation to coordinate. In Columbus Children's Hospital, they found that more than 1/3 of its appendectomy patients failed to get the right antibiotic at the right time. They created a checklist, but getting teams to stop and use the checklist to make it their habit was tricky. The director of surgical administration, who also happened to be a pilot, designed a small metal tent that was placed over the scalpel and had this phrase on it, "Cleared for takeoff." This served as a reminder to run the checklist before making the incision, and the surgeon could not start the operation until the nurse gave the okay and removed the tent. This was also a subtle cultural shift, giving the nurse the power to intervene, and in this way, the checklist also had the effect of distributing power. There are two types of checklists. With a do-confirm checklist, team members perform their jobs from memory and experience, often separately. But then they stop, they pause to run the checklist to confirm that everything that was supposed to be done was done. With a read-do checklist, people carry out the tasks as they check them off like a recipe. To ensure that checklists get used, you must define a clear pause point at which the checklist is supposed to be used. Always the pilot not flying starts the checklist, because the pilot flying can be distracted by flight tasks and liable to skip a checklist. Checklists must be tested in the real world. Also, checklists can facilitate the sharing of new knowledge. As failures are investigated and as we learn of better ways of doing things, getting the word out is far from assured. Incorporating the changes often takes years. The reason for the delay is usually not laziness or unwillingness. The reason is more often that the necessary knowledge has not been translated into a simple, usable, and systematic form. Good checklists are precise. They are efficient, to the point, and easy to use, even in the most difficult situations. They do not try to spell out everything, but provide reminders of the most critical and important steps. Brevity is key. Keep your checklist to between 5 and 9 items, focusing on the killer items. Ideally, your checklist should fit on a page, free of clutter and unnecessary colors. A good checklist should take between 30 to 60 seconds to complete. They are not comprehensive how-to guides, but they are quick and simple tools aimed to buttress the skills of expert professionals. Finding the balance is difficult because if you cut too much, you won't have enough checks to improve the process, but if you leave too much in, then the list becomes too long to use. You should try to focus checklists to ensure that people talk and work as a team. Finally, bad checklists are vague and imprecise. They're too long, they're hard to use, they're impractical. They treat people using the tools as dumb and try to spell out every single step. They turn people's brain off rather than turning them on. The difference between using a checklist signals the difference between an amateur and a professional. Finally, before closing this book on a page summary, I want to bring to your attention 2 relevant references from recent books that I've read. In Building a Second Brain, Tiago Forte talks about pre-project and post-project checklists. And in How to Take Smart Notes, Sönke Ahrens makes this point that significant results are most often achieved not through complex one-off heroic missions, but through simple workflows implemented consistently day in, day out. Checklists can be an engine to deliver these workflows day in, day out. I hope you found this book on a page summary helpful. I included a link to the book on a page in the video description. Also in the video description, you'll find a link to my visual thinking workshop course, which focuses on the workflow for creating such book on a page summaries. Thank you for watching until the end.